Such anger coming out of this Labour government today, kicking out one of their own councillors from the party, and the Foreign Commonwealth Office having a public spat with a newspaper. All of that coming up in this video. It's almost as though someone has said something to upset them. But wait, they did. I'll explain. But first of all, if you're new to me, please do subscribe to the channel. And even if you're not new and you watch regularly, please do subscribe to the channel. About half of you still don't. I'll be really grateful if you do. So this was just a really bizarre couple of exchanges for a Saturday. So I won't keep you long, I promise, but I have to fill you in on this if you're not familiar with it already. So Labour has kicked out one of Labour's own councillors, Steve Edwards, representing Brockmore and Pensnet, because he wrote a letter criticising Keir Starmer. Now, I'm going to come to the detail of that letter in just a minute, and the spat between the Foreign Office and the Telegraph, as it turns out, which is equally bizarre. But firstly, dealing with Labour councillor Steve Edwards. He's been expelled, booted out from the party because he wrote a letter disagreeing and criticising Keir Starmer. Now, isn't that a little bit of the case that if you don't agree with everything I do and everything I say, then we kick you out? That's pretty much what it seems to me. Let's have a look at a little bit more of the detail, and I'll link this Dudley News article in the description below. You can go and read it for yourself, but he said that he wrote a letter to Keir Starmer, a highly critical letter. It's quoted to be here. And in response, Keir Starmer terminated his party membership. He said, "I kind of expected it after I'd been so vocal about Starmer 6 or 7 months before the general election, that he seemed to turn his back on the working class." He says, "I was apprehensive about what it would be like when he became Prime Minister, but he made various promises that our heating bills would go down, pensioners will be looked after, school children will be fed, and there will be no tax rises. But within weeks of being elected, he completely changed his mind." Sound familiar? Maybe something I've been banging on about for several weeks now. He said, "It filters from the top down, and they are not listening to us from the bottom up. The working class are the wealth creators in this country. What Starmer is offering is no help at all." He carries on. "He's been treacherous to everybody. He's a massive liar." Labour said that the party does not comment on membership matters, but made it clear that Keir Starmer is not involved. But I don't really see how this would have happened without Keir Starmer, but that's possibly just an opinion. Dudley's Labour group leader, Councillor Pete Lowe, said, "It's a sad loss. Steve has been a strong community campaigner and an individual I've known and respected for many years. The Labour Party, when it's at its best and strongest, is a broad church that has people from all wings of the party fighting for the objectives of the party, etc., etc." He goes on. Councillor Edwards goes on to say that he's been a member of the Labour Party for around 8 years, although he left to fight the 2021 elections as an independent before returning to the party in 2022. He said he now sits as an independent councillor, presumably because obviously he's been kicked out of the party, so he now sits as an independent councillor, and says, "I'm gutted to have been kicked out, but more gutted for the reasons why I've been kicked out. The reason is because I'm a voice for the working class, and that just won't be tolerated. I still believe," he says, "the Labour Party is the best vehicle for social change in the country, but not when you have an establishment stooge like Keir Starmer running the party," he says. So this, even if people are supportive of the principles of the Labour Party, I suppose, he says that it is no good when you've got this establishment when they are not actually doing the things that they say they're going to do. Reading directly from Steve Edwards' own Facebook page here, it gets even worse, leading with "kicked out of the Labour Party." Now, it's personal opinion here. I find it difficult to believe this didn't happen without Keir Starmer's say-so, although the article just said that it wasn't him and they don't comment on it and that it was nothing to do with him, but I'm not sure I really believe that, but who knows, really. The Labour Party has kicked him out, so that's what he says, just to make it clear. He says, "After calling out Keir Starmer for his attacks on the working class, for removing winter fuel allowance and pensioners, for refusing to support children, and for lying about not raising our taxes, the Labour Party has terminated my membership. It appears being a working class person who publicly fights for the rights and support of working class people is prohibited in Sir Keir Starmer's Labour Party. Sir Keir Starmer," he goes on, "who before the general election claimed that he would put country before party, has had me removed from the Labour Party for putting my country and our working class people first. He continues, he is a treacherous man who is overseeing a dictatorship in the Labour Party. Anyone who criticises Sir Keir Starmer or his horrendous anti-working class policies will not be tolerated. He says, I joined the party to fight for the working class. I was elected as a Labour councillor to fight for the working class, but now the Labour Party has kicked me out for fighting for the working class. All a bit odd. He goes on, this week I wrote to Sir Keir Starmer pleading with him not to inflict council tax rises on the people of Dudley. You'll remember I've talked about council tax rises and everything else. Despite saying they won't go up, no, not a penny more, but many areas are going up. He says he wrote pleading not to inflict the council tax rises on the people of Dudley. Before the general election, he promised us there will be no council tax rises, but again it was yet another one of his lies to get into Downing Street. He says, I have no doubt in my mind that the letter I wrote to the Prime Minister and my standing up for the working class is the reason I've had my membership terminated. The Labour Party needs to get rid of people like Sir Keir Starmer, but instead they are getting rid of working class people like me and others. He said I'd stayed in the Labour Party to fight to return it to the party of the working class, but with establishment stooges like Starmer currently in control, I was fighting an uphill battle. He says, I am still Dudley councillor and will continue to oppose any attacks on the working class and with decent councillors in Dudley. It is not me who's left the Labour Party, it's the National Labour Party who've left me and the working class. Power to the working class people, not the establishment. Please share. And so I am sharing the view. He is now an ex-Labour councillor, now an independent councillor, as he says, fighting for the working class, which many people support that. But obviously, with what's actually happening from this Labour Party, I see as contradictory statements. Supporting, they say they were going to support the winter fuel allowance. They took it away. They said no more council tax rises. They increasing council taxes. They said no national insurance increases. Those are going up, etc., etc. Rishi Sunak had it quite right. He said, you name it, Labour will tax it. And that's what's been going on. So it really seems to me that if you disagree with the Labour Party, they kick you out. And so I can personally see a lot of councillors and a lot of MPs, for that matter, joining forces with other parties, perhaps Reform, or, I can't see them joining Conservative, frankly, maybe, but more likely Reform, I think, with the momentum and the growing popularity of Reform. I can see councillors and even MPs joining Reform, as they have been. We've seen one or two of them in recent days. So I wish Councillor Steve Edwards the best of luck in his endeavours moving forwards. Obviously, it will not be with the Labour Party. I feel that is a very, very strange situation to have. But there it is. That's the first thing. The second thing for today, which is really bizarre again, is this spat between the Foreign Office and the Telegraph. Now, since when have government departments been having a public spat with newspapers trying to correct their headlines? And I say trying deliberately because actually in defamation we have this bane and antidote way of analysing the thing, the headline and the bit in the content. So if you get an idea from the headline, you really need to read the article, because if the headline is really scathing but the article kind of puts it all in perspective and actually takes the sting out of the tail, then you need to read the full thing. And so when we look at this headline that they're complaining of here, which I'll show you in a minute, actually, they really just should have read the full article, and then they would have had no need to embarrass themselves, in my personal opinion, in making a post like this, such a public post like this. And so I know they want to get a little bit hip and do the social media thing, but I think many people get that wrong. Sometimes you have to just remain, grounded, down to earth. But let's have a look at what they said here. Now it says, the Telegraph front page, bearing in mind this is coming from the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, the Foreign Office. It says, the Telegraph front page today is wrong and mendacious, which means they're lying, and says, there will be no such delegation of Caribbean leaders or officials in spring. I'll come back to why they say that in a minute. And then it says, we do not pay reparations. So actually now this is sowing a statement for anything going forward. So just to recap the situation here a little bit. There's been an uproaring on social media and news in the last 24 hours or so that they're going to enter talks for reparations for things that have happened in the past, in a nutshell. And a lot of people have obviously said, we shouldn't pay reparations. That's nothing to do with us. Our generation didn't do anything wrong. Why should we pay reparations? We have made great financial sacrifice, which we've only recently stopped paying for, etc., etc. So this post here is drawing a line in the sand, making it absolutely clear, we do not pay reparations. So if later on they say, actually, yeah, we're going to pay reparations, or we're going to think about paying reparations, then we can come back to this post and remind the government of their post that said, think before you post, because they posted that we do not pay reparations. And they say, we made this clear to the Telegraph, which has decided to ignore the facts. So they state that the Telegraph is wrong and lying because there'll be no delegation, they don't pay reparations, and they made it clear to the Telegraph. Now, this is potentially, very strangely, potentially libelous by the Foreign Office against the Telegraph, because they are accusing the Telegraph of lying. But that's where we said about the headline and the article. So let's go to this bit of the article here. This is the front page here, the front page that they're talking about. Labour opens talks on slavery payouts. Now, this is obviously the headline that the Foreign Office has taken issue with, but if we read in some of the detail, I might need to move it around a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. If I shift it across, we're looking at this kind of area here, which I understand you probably can't read very well on the screen, but I'll read just snippets of these first two opening paragraphs for you. And as I say, you've got to take the headline and the article and read them in combination. And I think if the Foreign Office had done that properly, I'm not saying they haven't, but I think if they had have done it properly, then they need not have made that post, because if you do read it in full, I think it'd be wrong to say that they are lying. I think that's potentially libelous as a lawyer. Maybe my learned friend Alan Robertshaw could jump in on this one as well, but let's have a look at this. So the headline says, Labour to open talks on slavery payouts. Reparations, obviously. It says, Caribbean reparation team set for Foreign Office meeting after demands for £18 trillion. Now, these figures don't just drop out of the air. They don't come out of nowhere. Someone somewhere has hinted or said or whatever. And indeed it says, they talk about sources. It says the Foreign Office is open to talks on slavery reparations with Caribbean officials demanding trillions of pounds from the UK, sources have claimed. Now, I'm not going to play the video, but I'll remind you of the video of David Lammy saying that they want reparations, the previous video. So he has said such things before. And bearing in mind he's now our representative, that's not a far stretch of the imagination. It goes on. Members of the Reparations Commission of the Caribbean Community, political grouping of 15 states, has long demanded compensation of former colonial powers are planning to come to Britain in April. Caribbean sources suggested that the details of this trip will be formally confirmed in the coming weeks. A Foreign Office source insisted that it was normal for diplomats to meet regularly. The Foreign Office said that there was no plan for a ministerial meeting and that no date had been set for a UK CARICOM meeting. So just to recap, the headline says Labour is open to talks on slavery payouts. Caribbean reparation team set for Foreign Office meeting after demands for £18 trillion. They say sources have claimed that the Foreign Office is open to talks on these reparations. Then they say that the members of the committee have long demanded compensation and are planning to come in April. It says Caribbean sources have suggested that the details of the trip will be formally confirmed in the coming weeks. So they are relying on sources, which media outlets are, entitled to do. It says a Foreign Office source insisted that it was normal for diplomats to meet regularly. So they meet regularly, fine. Then this is the bit that I think, with respect, the Foreign Office may not have read in full and may not have posted that comment had they done so. It says here, the Foreign Office said that there was no plan for a ministerial meeting and that no date had been set for a UK CARICOM meeting. The spokesperson said the UK did not pay reparations and the government position had not changed. This will be the first delegation of its kind, etc., etc. So actually, has the Telegraph lied? They say sources have claimed that they're open to these talks, that the details of the meeting will be forthcoming, but they say the Foreign Office said that there was no plan for a meeting and that the UK did not pay reparations and the government's position has not changed. So they haven't lied. They've said what their sources have reported, but they've also put the Foreign Office position in clear text for everybody to read. So when we go back to this post, which says the Telegraph page is wrong and mendacious, lying, and says there'll be no such delegation of Caribbean leaders, officials in spring, and we do not pay reparations, how is the article lying if that's what the article said? And I find it really strange that a government department is having a public spat with a newspaper on X, and actually, when you read the article, it is there in clear text for everybody to read. So that is really strange. So if you disagree with the party or members of the party or Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour Party kicks you out. And I suspect other parties might be grateful to receive them. And if you're a newspaper and you print headlines and an article that tells people what sources have claimed to be going on, which may or may not go on, I mean, it may or may not be true, it's just what sources have claimed, then the relevant government department takes to social media and accuses the newspaper of lying. Well, I suspect that the newspaper lawyers will be all over this one, and I suspect they might well have a very good case. So let me know what you think about that in the comment section below. I had to share that with you, even though it's Saturday. I'll let you go for your dinner or whatever you're doing now. But please do remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and as always, thank you for watching.